Hello and welcome to the White Collar Fitness Radio, the ultimate podcast for professionals striving to achieve optimal performance in today's fast-paced age. I'm your host, Bruno Delladoni, online body transformation specialist and founder of The Health Coach Fitness. I'm here to help you optimize your health and fitness, even if you're short on time. All right, gang, welcome back to the podcast. Today, we're discussing 5 bad sleeping habits and how you can fix them. So, I'm sure you have had poor night's sleep at some point or another. There are probably a few things that you are doing, or if not have done, that are probably contributing to your poor sleep. So here, we're going to discuss just over the top some bits that might be causing that. And then I will be giving you maybe some solutions, maybe some things for you to work on. Keeping it quite casual. Hi guys. We're getting into it. What are the habits that tend to, and I say habits as a broad stroke here, but things that you might be doing, maybe not every night, but things that definitely contribute to you not having the best night. One that I know a lot of people are guilty of, probably because they are working hard, end up working late, don't really know what to get on their way home. And so they end up eating a little bit too much. Full stomach is terrible for your sleep. Because what happens is, instead of your body slowing down and being restful and sleeping, your body obviously has to digest that food. Otherwise, that stuff will ferment in your stomach, and that won't be good for anybody. So having a full stomach when you go to sleep, not ideal. This does, as a point of interest, also include liquids. Obviously, if you drink too much water, too much whatever liquid before you go to bed, assuming it's non-alcoholic, you're probably just going to need to pee. So this is something that also is worth bearing in mind. Naturally, if it's alcohol, you'll also probably need to pee. But then you also have all the added jazz of the alcohol, which we'll get into later. Something else that can massively impact your sleep is having a negative interaction with your partner. And I put negative because it doesn't just have to be an argument, although that tends to be the way things go. But if you're having an argument with your significant other, even if it's not a significant other, maybe you're on the phone and you spoke to your mum and she is chewing your ear off. Or maybe you're talking to your mother-in-law and that's all kicking off. Whatever, right? Doesn't matter. Arguments, intense conversations, stressful situations, sad interactions, whatever, anything that's negative, hence why I put negative interactions. But anything that's negative will have an impact, because usually, especially if they're on the slightly more stressful, maybe irritating side, some of those stress hormones are going to start kicking in. And those are the things really we want at the front end of the day when you wake up, because they help you wake up, they help you be more productive, and all these fun and exciting things that you definitely actually want. But when we are going to bed, obviously you want to be winding down. So being stressed before you go to bed isn't great. Not wearing, this is out of left field, you're not going to guess this, but not wearing the right sleep attire can impact. So there's a 2019 study by Chow and company, and the name of the study is The Impact of Sleepwear Fiber Type on Sleep Quality Under Warm Ambient Conditions. And basically what they found is that there is a statistically significant benefit for wool sleepwear for all participants, and in particular for older and poorer sleepers. So naturally, this is quite important. Making sure that you're wearing the right stuff to go to sleep is important. Now, we'll get to some of the other stuff around sleep, wear and sleep environment a little bit later, but it's important to just make sure that there is a fine balance here. You don't want to be too warm, you don't want to be too cold, And according to this study by Chow, sleeping in wool natural fibers is better than synthetic, polyester, or cotton. So who knew? Now, one that's a very big one, and I actually tell my clients this on a fairly regular basis, and I also get ignored on a fairly regular basis, not calling anyone out by name, but who you are, in not optimizing your sleep environment. So your sleep environment, we can break that down into your room and your bed. So your room would be things like the lighting, the smells, and the temperature. And obviously all these things are very, very important. You want to make sure that you're optimizing your room temperature when you're going to sleep. You want to make sure that you've got smells and fragrances that support your going to sleep. And you want to make sure that the lighting in your room also encourages and promotes, not promotes because light won't promote as such, but definitely doesn't hinder your sleep. And then we can look at the bed itself. And things like pillow height and setup, really, really important. So obviously, if you sleep on your side, you might want a pillow that's a little bit higher to keep your spine in alignment. And obviously, if you're a back sleeper or front sleeper, you might want a pillow that's a little bit less tall, a little bit flatter. Again, to support the spinal alignment, and so you don't feel like your neck is being pushed or pulled in any crazy direction. Now, with pillow setup, also randomly, but I'm sure people have heard this. Obviously, if you snore and you're on your back, you sleep on your back a lot, you might want to sleep on your side, in which case you might choose to get yourself something like a pregnancy pillow to help you sleep on your side, to help block you from spinning and rotating and turning in the night. Equally, if you get weird hip pain, if you're sleeping on your side, you might want to slide a cheeky cushion or a cheeky pillow between your legs to just bump up that leg height so it's in a little bit more alignment with the actual hip joint. So all these fun things that we can play with, but turns out your bed is not only made up of pillows, so you also have your sheets, and your sheet setup is really, really important. You want something that's breathable and made out of natural material, ideally. So something like cotton or bamboo, maybe even natural silk, not synthetic silk, but natural silk. All these things really, really important because obviously you don't want your bed to get too hot when you're sleeping. So you want that breathability, and natural fibers tend to be pretty good for that. And now a big one, and this is a really big one, which is not winding down. Allowing your body and your brain enough time to get into rest mode. This is crucial, and it's something that, to be honest, I'm also not all that great at, but it's really, really important. And allowing enough time for your body to just settle. Again, if we go back to negative interactions, you want to make sure that you're not having those. You're winding down, you're allowing your body to calm itself before you go to sleep. These are really the main culprits we tend to see where, and there are others obviously, but these are really the main culprits that at least I tend to see where people end up not sleeping very well. So it might be worth, if you feel like you do any of these or anything like this resonates, it might be worth you just taking a second and one thinking, why is it that it's resonating? Are you doing that? Are you going to sleep on a full stomach? Are you constantly having full on arguments with the other half before you go to bed? Probably not ideal. Cool. Now you might say, Bruno, fantastic. You've given me some of the reasons why my sleep is terrible. What can I do about it? And here we have a handful of cheeky solutions. Precisely 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7-ish. Actually 6 and a bonus for you to implement. Now, I will emphasize the bonus at the front end, which is you need to be patient with this stuff. As you know, none of this stuff happens overnight. Any behavior change, anything that we do like that, it always takes a bit of time. And it's important that we realize that so that we can celebrate the wins as they happen. So we can build on some foundations and start slowly implementing new things where they stack on top of each other and they all interplay to create a bigger solution, as opposed to just thinking, one, you're going to do one thing and that's it. It's going to be your poor sleep is going to be completely fixed. Or two, you're going to do it for 2 seconds, a couple of days, and then you'll be sorted. None of this is how it works. And you know this, if you've been listening to my podcast, if you've spoken to me in person, if you've interacted with me on social media, you know that this is very much a philosophy of mine. Change takes time, and it's important that you stick with it. Enough waffle. First things first, make a plan. So if you're going to tackle any problem, first thing you need to do is have a plan, right? Treat it like a work project. I like people to think about it in those terms because we've all had work projects. You know what you need to do. You need to sit down. You need to have a project overview so you know how to attack it, and then systematically attack each point in that overview plan so that at the end you've completed your project. This is a little bit like this, although completion date is always up in the air because nothing's ever complete where it comes to your health and fitness. But it's important to start. So make a plan. Or at the very least, if you don't want to make a plan, at least just have a bit of a conscious thought about it. And this is one of my favorite quotes. It's a Bruno own. So if you haven't got it in the poster yet, make sure you do and attribute it to me. But most people let life happen to them, whereas I would like you to happen to life, right? So don't just go by your day to day without actually having a plan of how you're going to tackle that day. Don't just let things happen to you. Take charge of them, make them happen. Ideally, I'd like you to have a point of focus until that focus point becomes a habit, and then you can add on a new point of focus. So that's what I said. You're building on foundations. You're taking one box at a time. You're building slowly so these things can start to work together. Point number 2 is have, and this is honestly, I cannot tell you how many people resist this, but have a consistent sleep schedule. So a 2015 study by Duncan et al. Named greater bed and wake time variability is associated with less healthy lifestyle behaviors, a cross-sectional study. And what they found is that having bedtimes that were varied by more than 30 minutes were associated with lower dietary quality, higher alcohol consumption, higher sitting time, more frequent insufficient sleep, and poorer overall pattern of lifestyle behaviors. There's always a bit of natural variability where it comes to your sleep, right? You're not going to sleep at the exact same time every single day. Things happen. We're human. Life goes on, right? But making sure that you have a set time that is the ideal for you to get to bed. Now, I'm a big fan of the concept that just because you can't always live up to that ideal doesn't mean that you should blow up the ideal and not have an ideal at all, right? There is, in fact, an ideal. So let me give you an example. For me, because I am slightly sick in the head, I get up at 4:30 in the morning most mornings. But if I'm trying to get my 8 hours of sleep, that does mean that my bedtime has got to be really no later than about 8:30 p.m. As you can imagine, this does pose certain logistical problems. For example, I don't have much of an evening social life, especially in the week. sacrifices sometimes have to be made. You might wake up later than me, which means you probably go to bed later than me, which probably means you can, in fact, have an evening social life. Nonetheless, does that mean that I get to sleep at 8:30 every night? No. Some nights I'm in bed at 8. Sometimes I'm in bed at 9. Sometimes I don't actually fall asleep until 9:30. But I try my damned hardest to be in bed before 8:30, like 8:15, 8 o'clock ideally, so that I can wind down the final bits of my wind down in bed and then go to sleep be at sleep for 8:30. Like I said, it doesn't always happen. But it is important because we know, right, that poor sleep affects hunger and satiety hormones, for example. And then you look at what this study said in 2015, and by having more than 30 minutes variation on either side of your sleep was associated with lower dietary quality. Well, your body very much likes patterns. Your brain is a fantastic machine that likes to create these patterns of behavior so that it can easily preempt what hormones to throw out at the right time. That's why eating, and this is a bit of a tangent, but eating consistently, again, with minimal variation in what you're eating, is actually beneficial to your system because your body knows. And when I say variation, I mean almost like more carbohydrate variation, not carbohydrate, sorry, macronutrient variation, because your body knows what enzymes to throw out at the right time to help you digest, so your digestion is more efficient, right? If we look at what we're talking about here in terms of sleep, well, by having that less varied sleep time, your body knows when to start winding down naturally. Your body knows when to start up regulating those sleep hormones so that when you sleep, you actually get more restful sleep, better quality sleep, that then impacts all the stuff that we've just spoken about. Again, just one last time, having bedtimes that varied by more than 30 minutes were associated with lower dietary quality, higher alcohol consumption, higher sitting time, more frequent insufficient sleep, and poorer overall pattern of lifestyle behavior. Now, as far as I know, most people are trying to improve their pattern of lifestyle behavior. Everybody wants to be healthier. Now, point number 3, big one, especially at the TikTok age, at the Instagram Reels age. I'm guilty for that. Avoid electronic devices pre-bed. And the important thing here to realize, guys, is that it's not just blue light. Although people always think, oh no, blue light is going to kill me, right? And don't get me wrong, not ideal. Slightly faster wavelength, which not ideal for what we're doing here. But it's not just blue light, it's all bright light. So even if you've got, say, for example, red light, which is preferable, but if it's dialed up to the 9s in terms of how intense that light is, how bright it is, and then you're looking at it, that really isn't great. It will suppress your melatonin production or secretion at least. And melatonin, it's not so much that it's your sleep hormone, so much as it's your sleep better hormone. It's going to help you sleep deeper. It's going to help you have better REM sleep. It's going to help you just have better sleep. And the other thing too here, aside from the light, where as it pertains to looking at electronic devices, is that it's not just the light, it's also the stimulating content. And if we look back at what we're saying about negative interactions with your partner, again, if you're looking at stimulating, basically, the whole point of the negative interactions with your partner is that that stuff is stimulating, right? It upregulates all your stress systems because, well, it's a negative interaction. Well, often the algorithms on all the stuff we look at, whether you're reading the news, whether you're looking at TikTok, whether you're looking at Instagram, it doesn't matter, looking at Twitter, all these systems are designed to basically get your dopamine hit. And oftentimes, the way they do that is by actually stimulating some negative feelings. So it goes back to that. You're upregulating all those stress systems just before bed. So it's not just the light, it's also the content you're consuming. So best thing to do here is, and I know it's a long time, I understand this, but it's to actually pack away your electronics, be really disciplined at putting that stuff down, reading or talk. Revolutionary idea here. Talking to your partner. Wow. Who knew? But doing stuff like that so that you're not looking at screens, so that you're not getting stimulated. And then when that stuff is done, and don't tell her because I know she doesn't listen to my podcast, but I'm definitely calling out my wife here, is then once you've read your book, once you've spoken to your other half, don't then look at your TikTok or at your phone just to make sure, I don't know what, right? Like, it's silly. You've done all this good work and now you've undone some of it. It just seems, well, backwards. Number 4 on our awesome solutions points over here is avoid caffeine too late in the day and limit overall caffeine intake. Now, listen, for any of you that have followed me for any length of time, I am Brazilian. I don't actually have blood in my veins. I have coffee. So if you cut me up, if you cut me open, there would be no blood. There's no red. It's all just black coffee coming out of my veins. With that said, it's important that you limit your overall intake. Now, if you follow fitness people on the interwebs, you'll know that fitness people are obsessed with White Monster. Don't ask me why. I don't understand it. It doesn't taste nice. And it's basically just caffeine. Just like, please, people, just have a coffee. But anyway, point being, caffeine has a very long half-life, right? Which means that it stays in your system for a really long time. And because of that, if you're having caffeine too late in the day, it'll obviously negatively impact your sleep. Now, again, I cannot tell you how many times I've spoken to people and they say to me, oh, I can drink an espresso just before I go to bed and I sleep fine, Bruno. And then it's 7 o'clock in the morning and they're yawning their faces off. You get to sleep fine. You can close your eyes and lights go out. Fine. That doesn't mean that the stuff that's happening whilst the lights are out is necessarily any good. So the quality of your sleep is massively impaired, right? Like, there is data. Listen, I don't have a study with me here to cite, but it doesn't take 2 seconds of a PubMed search or a Google Scholar search to tell you that this is in fact a thing. I should have looked up a study to tell you guys this, but I didn't. But point being, it massively impacts your sleep quality. So it's important that, of course, have coffee. Listen, like I said, I am the first one to be doing caffeine shots in my eyeballs. Love it. 10 out of 10. That's a joke. Don't do that. But anyway, but you have to limit how much you're having and you have to have it early in the day. So what does this actually look like practically? It looks like on the side of caution. Some people will tell you 6 hours. Some people tell you 8 hours. Listen, I'm much more of a fan of have your coffee early in the day and then have decaf. And people always scorn a decaf, but most people can't tell the difference. So if you're going to have a coffee past, I don't know, depending what time you go to bed really, but 11 o'clock, midday, definitely past like 1 p.m., decaf. If you're going to have a coffee, it's decaf. My personal preference is for you to stop drinking caffeinated coffee or caffeinated anything for that matter past 10 a.m. But like I said, I err on the side of caution. I am extreme where it comes to this stuff. Limit alcohol intake. This is the next fun point that everyone completely ignores and is completely shocked when they go out on a bender and realize that their sleep is trash and they're affected for the rest of the week. Limit your alcohol intake. Here, I do in fact have a study for you guys. A 2020 meta-analysis by Burgos Sanchez. So for those of you not overly familiar with evidence hierarchy, meta-analyses are the bomb diggity of evidence. And the reason for that is that they basically put together different studies. So a meta-analysis isn't a fresh trial as such, but what it does is it analyzes the available evidence within a certain criteria, and then it obviously analyzes it and it spits out the result. The idea being that many people, obviously funding dependent, but researchers will do similar studies that are somewhat adjacent to one another. And sometimes they will do many studies. Over the years, there'll be many studies that are, let's say, somewhat adjacent. So what you then have is a systematic review and meta-analysis, which this is, and we'll get to that in a second, which puts it all together, filters out for a specific criteria, and then gives you the meta result. Hopefully that makes some sense so that you guys understand that what I'm giving you here is the bomb diggity of bomb diggities. So getting to it. 2020 meta-analysis by Burgos Sanchez called Impact of Alcohol Consumption on Snoring and Sleep Apnea, a systematic review and meta-analysis. Alcohol consumption is associated with worsening severity of snoring, altered sleep architecture, AHI, as well as lowest oxygen saturation among patients susceptible to snoring and obstructive sleep apnea. Now, we know that sleep apnea are events where you don't breathe properly, you have less oxygen going into your system while you sleep. Those aren't great. It means your sleep is of a much poorer quality. So we know that alcohol consumption massively impacts that. And this is in fact important because if we know that, then we can see that if drinking is our poison, excuse the pun, then perhaps we should start slowly phasing that out. Not always the easiest to do, absolutely not. And alcohol is a very big vice for very many people. But it's important to realize that alcohol is not in fact your friend. What you think is a relaxing little habit you have actually really isn't. And don't get me wrong, I'll have a bit of alcohol now and again with some friends. We'll go out and it's fine. It's context dependent, at least for me. But it's really weird for me to look at how people treat alcohol because, to be honest, I just don't really understand it. People go, oh, but I like the taste. Right. But you also like the taste of Coca-Cola, like a Coke. And then people go, oh, yes, but you're just sociable. What's sociable is you being there with your mates, talking. What you're in fact drinking is less of a part of that than people make it out to be. So, okay, I don't really know. I'm not an expert on, not drinking or drinking or whatever. All I'm saying is, from a fitness point of view, from a sleep point of view, this stuff isn't great. And now, for our last point that directly reflects back what we said in terms of things that people do, which is optimizing your environment. So, really important, going back to the room situation. Okay? Another study for you, 2022 systematic review. We've just spoken about systematic reviews and meta-analysis. So 2022 systematic review by Chen et al. The effects of lavender on sleep quality in individuals without insomnia, a systematic review. Here's what they found. Lavender essential oil was associated with improved sleep quality before insomnia or other sleep disorders occurred. Okay, I always bang on about smells. This is what I said when I said it earlier in terms of not optimizing your sleep environment. And I said it was light, smell, and temperature. And when I said smell, you're probably like, Bruno, what on earth are you talking about now? This is what I'm talking about. So smells, really important. Because, well, a couple of things here. One, lavender is calming for the nervous system, right? So your brain is calming for your brain. You sniff it and you're like, oh my God, I'm so chill right now. That's one. There's other smells that do that. Things like ylang and chamomile. It's always a fun word to say, isn't it? Ylang. Anyway, so there's other smells that do that. This here, obviously lavender has been researched, so awesome. Use that if you want, but it does that. The other thing that it does is it helps you anchor something. So I said earlier, your brain is very good at creating patterns, and smells tend to create anchors in your brain so that your brain can quickly revert back and go, okay, that's what we're doing. Right? So if you, like, people have some sort of smell that when they smell it, they go, oh my God, this takes me back to my childhood. This is what I'm talking about. It's the anchoring. So how does this relate to us? Well, if you say, for example, you use lavender essential oil in your bedroom, and your bedroom should be your sleep haven, right? You shouldn't really be, absolutely should not have a TV in your bedroom, but whatever, right? You shouldn't be really doing too many other things aside from maybe shagging and sleeping in your bedroom. Because you want, for when you go into your bedroom, your brain instantly knows, haven. Awesome. That's number one. Number two, the way you do that, or one of the ways you can do that, is by adding smells. So you add just your lavender essential oil day in, day out. So you're smelling the lavender, you're going to sleep. You're smelling the lavender, you're going to sleep. What does that do? Well, your brain anchors that when you smell lavender, it's wind down time, it's sleep time. This is really important, right? It helps create that pattern that when you smell it, you sleep. Awesome. Warm, dim lighting. This goes back to bright lights as a whole. When it gets a bit later in the evening, what you want to be doing is, instead of using overhead main lights, you want to be using lamps that are warm and dim, favorable wavelengths of light, oranges and reds. If you've got one of these smart light bulbs and it gets to the evening, you want all of this stuff to be red. Sounds hippie, I know. So you've already got your lavender, and now you've got your red lamps. What's going on over here, Bruno? And I tell you, what's going on is some good damn sleep. That's what's up. Next is your cool room, right? So to almost round off the whole room stuff, is you want it cool. If the exterior of your bed is too warm, the inside of your bed is going to also be too warm, and you're not going to be having a good time. You want the outside of your sheets, of your duvet, of your covers to be cool, and actually probably a bit cooler than you think. I'm thinking like 16 degrees. Now, people have done numbers, and there is, in theory, like perfect sleep temperature. I don't buy that. Different. People operate differently. Now, I'm sure on average, but whatever. Point being, you want it cool. Like I say, 15, 16 degrees, maybe even a bit cooler. And the reason for that is that, especially if you sleep with someone, if you have a partner, another half, when you're in bed, you will usually get quite warm. Again, depending on the sheets you have, the duvet you have, and the mattress or mattress topper you have. But nonetheless, you tend to get quite warm. And so what do? You stick a foot out. Now, the reason for that is that the soles of your feet, the palms of your hands, they tend to be, and the like third of your face, but whatever, that's irrelevant. They tend to be your main cooling points or heating points, as the case may be. But so what happens is you kick your foot out, you've got a sole of your foot out, the room's cool, you'll start pulling heat out of you. So your temperature regulation is better. But if your room's warm, that just skews the whole process. Not great. All right. So those are the main points, guys. Now, what did I say at the very start of the solutions? Be patient with the changes, right? Listen back to this. Pick the thing that is most relevant to you, that you think is the lowest hanging fruit, that's going to get the biggest bang for your buck. Pick that, implement it. Be patient with it until it becomes a bit more of a habit. Then you pick the next one and you implement that. These things are important. And so I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but whatever his name is, Fraser, the CrossFit guy who won the CrossFit Games like 5 million times. I don't know. He's like one of the fittest people on earth. And he was doing an interview. I actually saw this the other day on an ad, weirdly. But he said this: if wasn't a natural thing, it would be a banned substance. This is how powerful sleep is. He is one of the fittest athletes on the planet. And he's telling you what we all should inherently know but have forgotten, which is sleep is the biggest thing you can do, not only for your performance, but also for your overall health. So pay attention to it. This day and age, it's really easy to just almost forget about it, right? Like, sleep when you're dead. And yeah, sure, is also true, right? But if you want to get the most out of life, if you want to be the most efficient, effective you can be, this needs to be a priority. Anyway, I'm going to end with that. Guys, as always, if you found this helpful, if you found it mildly entertaining, if you found it educational, if it helped you or you know would benefit from this, please share it with everyone. Share it with your friends, with your family. Give us a 5-star review, 5-star rating, and I will see you guys next time.